Hello, I'm Dr. Sunny Fridge. Welcome to another edition of Rise and Shine with Dr. Sunny, the show that helps you unleash your inner speaking superpowers. Each week, you get tips, tools, and techniques to help you become a better communicator. On this edition of Rise and Shine, no more bad Zoom, and how you can get 5% better every time you host or present online. Plus, I'll help you get better as a speaker when you attend my free monthly Speak and Shine workshop. Stay tuned for the details at the end of this show. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, share in the comments below where you're watching from. If you're listening by podcast, subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoy our programs, please consider making a donation of any amount at wytv7.org. It helps our CBN broadcasters continue the mission to bring you programming that educates, empowers, and encourages. I believe we all have a purpose and the potential to live our best life. For many of us, life as we know it continues to be a time of unprecedented change and uncertainty as we do the pandemic pivot from moving our face-to-face events to online platforms. If you're a speaker, entrepreneur, or leader, then more than likely, virtual events have become a part of your business plan, and you need to up-level your hosting and presenting skills. My guest is masterful when it comes to doing this. Robbie Samuels is a virtual event design consultant, Zoom trainer, and producer. He's also the creator and host of a weekly online event called No More Bad Zoom. Welcome, Robbie.
Thank you so much for having me, Sunny.
Tell us where you're from and a little bit about your professional background.
Well, I'm living in the Boston area for nearly 20 years, originally from Long Island, New York. And prior to the pandemic, I was really known for my expertise in networking. I was working with organizations to help them design more engaging events, which at the time we just said events, but now I mean in-person events. And I was helping participants make the most of those opportunities. I wrote a book on this topic. I did a TEDx. I host a podcast for over 4 years. So I spent about 10, 12 years speaking professionally around that topic. But as of March 9th, I started to realize that the skills I had and what I was known for was becoming less and less necessary. And by March 11th, 2 days later, I realized that eye contact, business cards, shaking hands, and body language was not going to be what I'd be talking about for quite a while, as all the events started to either be canceled, postponed, or a few at first were put online, and now many, many, many are online. And since that time, I have shifted my focus from in-person to online, but my message is still the same. Just the medium has changed. The message is events are about content and connection. And so since mid-March, I have been hosting a weekly event, as you mentioned, since March 13th, actually, the day everything sort of hit pause.
Right.
And in May, I launched a 4-week program to teach Zoom skills in online facilitation and virtual event design, which has now become a certification program. We've had about 40 people go through that program. And I'm now hired to help organizations bring their events online as a Zoom producer and virtual event design consultant. So a lot has changed in just about half a year.
Wow. Robbie, I like to joke that I've been on so many Zoom meetings and webinars that I don't know whether I work at home or I live at work. And I was reading about your program and finding out a little bit more. It can be really tough for participants when the presenter doesn't know what he or she is doing. And you say when it comes to hosting and presenting on Zoom, what passed as okay in March and April has become less tolerated and will soon not be acceptable.
That's definitely true. I remember back in April, there were 2 events that I attended in actually late March and early April where the presenter said, okay, and one of them was actually to show us information about how to use different aspects of Zoom. Another one was a training on just general something else. And both times the speaker went to send us to breakout rooms only to discover that they were not enabled. And then we had to have this sort of tough moment where it was like, well, do we leave and come back? And, you know, today, now we're in late September, heading into October in the fall of 2020. If
Mhm.
that were to happen now, I mean, it was understandable then that if you were using someone else's Zoom account, maybe the settings weren't right. But now it's sort of like walking into a Marriott to present and saying to your audience, "Well, I was planning to have slides, but I forgot to ask for a, projector. Sorry." Just you wouldn't be seen as professional. You wouldn't be invited back. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. And the baseline of what's acceptable is going to keep shifting, which is why, as you mentioned in the intro, I do believe that we have to be getting 5% better every time we host or present in an online space, because the game is, other people are working hard. We got to work just equally as hard to keep getting better.
Yeah, it reminds me of like, who moved my cheese? Every time I get here, now Zoom has a new version. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. There's so much to keep learning. And one of the ways that you can keep learning is through your event, No More Bad Zoom. So please tell us about this.
So as I mentioned, since March 13th, I have been hosting this event. What happened was March 11th, I was feeling kind of low. How am I going to show up and add value right now? And it wasn't so much about my business. It was really like, how do I as a person show up? And I thought 10 years from now, that's what we're going to remember, like who showed up. And I was, at a peer mastermind meeting, which is why I highly encourage people having peer masterminds. And they kind of kicked me in the butt and said, you know more about networking than most people. You don't think that it's about online, about events only. You do it online. Go and write something. So the next day, I released 9 ways to network in a pandemic, and I posted on social and shared as an email, and got a great response. And I thought I should probably do one of these 9 things. The reason it's Friday at 5 is because I thought of it Thursday at 9. I mean, Thursday at 9 o'clock at night. Um, and they said yes. And so the next day I asked a few more people, and we had about 20 people come to the first one. And we went around the room, did the introductions. I'm a good facilitator online. I didn't even realize that was a skill. I've been doing online events for a while, so I was comfortable doing it. But what I've learned is that the same skills we have for doing in-person events, they don't always translate. So for instance, in person, if you were doing like okay, everyone give their updates or make share an introduction, there wouldn't be very many questions about who was going next, because you'd be going down a line or going around in a circle. But here online, like, we never know who's next, and usually the facilitator ends up going in the order that they see on their own screen, which is not the order that we see. And so I teach things around like that kind of on deck is sort of the answer to that. Like, how do you make sure people know who's coming next? So anyway, I digress. I've been hosting this, and April 14th, I started to collect RSVPs for this. It's a free event, but I do have a Zoom registration page, and I had 800 people have signed up for the event since April 14th.
Wow.
And 50 or 60 come every single week. And I've been doing polling. And so 50% of the 50 or 60 who come have been there 8 or more times. 20% have been there enough times they can't remember. They just plan their week around it. Some of those folks told me they've been there 12, 15, 18 times. Now, the weekly events are going on for months, and there are people who literally, like, this is our Friday together. About 20, 30% are new each time. It's just been incredible. And so the first 75 minutes is a mixture of content where I'm sharing a little bit of Zoom, sort of tips, strategies, techniques, maybe reviewing some of that new, like you said, new updates that come on, best practices. We do 2 or 3 breakouts rooms, depending on whether we have a guest come in and do a demo. And the last breakout that we do, people can move from room to room for 15 minutes with all the rooms having different topics, which is as close to actual networking as you can get online. And then at 6:15 Eastern, I start doing Q&A, which originally I was planning to do this for 15 minutes, but people wanted more. So then I stayed till 7 o'clock Eastern. And lately, the last like 6 weeks, it's been ending at 7:30 with me having to politely say goodbye. I never want to be the first to say goodbye, I'm always the one who stays around and stacks chairs at the end of events. So, but now I'm like, I have a strict deadline. I've got dinner with my family's at 7:30, but there are still a dozen people still in the room at 7:30, like waiting to talk. So, and waiting to listen, and learn. So it's an incredible space. It's free. You can find it at nomoorebadzoom.com. And while I haven't charged for that, I've gotten like dozens of referrals because of it. And that's really what my business is built on. That has been the most amazing sort of lead generation. And, from that also is what launched the 5% Advantage program. But it's really all came from this weekly dedication to doing this event that, was theoretically an hour when it started. Now it's this 2.5 hour sort of experience.
Well, tell me a little bit more about a couple of tips that you can share with our viewers and listeners of the best practices if they're getting on Zoom, and if they're a speaker or entrepreneur, and now as they've made their pivot, they find out it's just not, you just can't show up. There are a few things that you need to know. Lately, what have you found that is very helpful? Maybe even some tips about how to make it more engaging or fun or interactive. That's what I would love for you to share, because you
Absolutely.
always have some great tips.
Absolutely. Well, there was a great article in Fast Company where the global director for events for Microsoft wrote about how he thinks of in-person events as being theatrical and online events being cinematic. So here's my interpretation of this. So in this sense, and I have professional speakers who are friends who say, like, for them, what they're doing when they're designing their virtual events is they're competing with TV. Like,
Mhm.
they're really raising the bar. And the other thing I sort of relate this to is I've learned from some neuroscientists that we need to shift the state every 7 minutes for people to stay engaged and focused. So when I'm presenting, or emceeing or anything like that, or hosting in some way, I don't have like a clock next to my desk that says, okay, it's been 7 minutes, but it's just sort of an internal sense. All right, now it's time to call on somebody. Now it's time to see what's going on in chat, answer a question, share a screen, do a poll, do breakouts. And, I think if we were to design our sessions, not the 45 minutes of death by PowerPoint followed by ineffectual Q&A and no one moderating chat, that was never a good plan and definitely isn't today. But if instead we had sort of a 7 or so minute sort of segment and then another segment, and there's these sort of transition moments. And even if I'm still presenting at this point in the conversation, I would have called on someone. And that's actually another technique I think works really well. I've even done it for webinars, because even on webinars, like if it's Zoom webinar or WebEx or something, you can see the participant list. So I'll call out people as if I can see them, because I know that it's gonna draw them back in and have them be really engaged. So, whether I actually can see them or I can't, I call people's names. But we have to be thinking from the participant perspective. And really, I guess the first and foremost thing is, what is the purpose of this gathering? And then design the gathering to meet that purpose. And you can't have 17 purposes. Really, you have to have one primary and then maybe like a secondary purpose for an online event. I once did an event, was a kickoff to a 3-day conference, and we didn't have an end time sort of planned, 4 o'clock Eastern, and it lasted actually over 3.5 hours, nearly 4 hours. And we were teaching them about Zoom and teaching them about Slack and doing tons of breakout rooms and just kind of joking about the topic. And I tell a lot of bad dad jokes as part of my emceeing. And really, I was 300 to 400 people on for most of the call. And at the end, after I kept saying, like, okay, we're going to wrap up in a minute. And, and people just stayed. I mean, like, I had to actually put 23 people in the waiting room manually, one at a time, because I wanted to stay after and talk to my colleagues for a minute about how it went. And it was like closing in on 4 hours at that point. So it's pretty incredible that, I keep hearing about Zoom fatigue. And I really think Zoom fatigue, I think it's real, but I think that it's caused by two things not being met. And you have to have at least one of these met to try to avoid it. One is highly relevant content, which hopefully as a speaker, that's something you're providing. And the other is a highly engaging presentation. And if you can have both of those things, people will stay. I mean, every week people come at 2 minutes to 5 and stay till 7:30. It's incredible. And then like I said, I've done these programs that have lasted for hours, and I counsel my events or my event clients to not scrunch. Like, if they had an 8-hour day in person, don't make it a 4-hour day online. by like taking out all the breaks and all the interaction, because people are craving interaction. So if you can provide that for people, that's what people are craving right now. And so providing a way for them to get a little bit of content, get some interaction and connection with people, and that's what these weekly events have done.
Great. And those are all great points. And I always say include some bathroom breaks, or at least a break where you can just step away, stand up, stretch, because sometimes that's where the Zoom fatigue comes in. Especially, I find if I have to get on another meeting and I've already been on a long conference, and everybody, all my clubs from Toastmasters and the Optimist Club, and then my realtors. I mean, it's amazing. And it's pacing yourself to a degree, but you've given us some good food for thought, virtual food for thought, that is. So I want to also let our viewers and listeners know about a Zoom certification that you have, the 5% Advantage program. What's that about?
Well, I realized as I was doing this weekly event that I was starting to get lots of inquiries of, hey, can you help me with this? I have a question about this setting. I don't understand what's going on with this. How do I make this happen? This is what I did in person. How would I do it online? And I'm a business strategy coach. So unrelated to all the other things we've mentioned, I coach entrepreneurs and what I call relationship-based business strategy. And I've taught people how to discover their ideal client, which is really to pay attention to who's already showing up and asking you for your advice, support, or services. And so I took note of the fact, again, very quickly in, late March, going into early April, there were all these people who were asking me these questions. And so by mid-April, I declared that I was going to do this 4-week program. It was a pilot. I had 14 people sign up. We ran it. It was really great. I immediately decided to do another one, and I actually ran it 4 months in a row, 4 weeks at a time. And so about 40 people have gone through it. And in the third month, I decided, these folks are working really hard. They're meeting in person for at least 6 hours. They're doing a practice set, video that I'm critiquing. They're asking questions and doing practice runs all month. And then I thought, if I could make this a certification, this would be really valuable, because we're all trying to figure out how to stand out and show that we know how to present in these new circumstances. And so it's the certified virtual event professional, hashtag no more bad Zoom. It's a digital badge. It's verified by me, but it's sent to them through credentials.net, so it could be verified that they have it. They can share it on LinkedIn, etc. And so it's actually helps. I've only certified a few people so far. This is the time period where I have about a dozen people who are submitting. They have to submit a separate certification video. They have to do 10 out of 12 criteria. I mean, there's a lot of work. And those that are doing it, I have 3 that have already gotten in, 2 of them have already gotten work out of it. So one of them is a presenter, and she immediately lined up 2 other gigs to speak. She happens to be 86 years old. She's incredible. The other one is an event professional, who had been a meeting professional who lost her job when the pandemic hit 6 months ago. And as soon as she got the certification and posted on LinkedIn, she got an offer to help bring an event online. And so she now has a gig and has a client, has a way to make money. So I feel very good that I'm able to support people, whether they're presenters or meeting professionals. And one of the things I've realized is that not all speakers understand how to work with Zoom producers. So I'm actually planning to do this fall a master class on how to work with a Zoom producer and how to even know whether you need one, and at what point do you need to hire one, how much to expect to pay for a professional. Because I mean, you can hire someone for, $25 an hour, but I'm going to be like more than 10 times that. But what you're going to get when you hire a professional is that we're also able to make sure there's no dead air. We'll jump in. We'll help make game time decisions. We'll help you do strategy and design of the event beforehand. Like, I've had people hire me to press buttons, just just be our Zoom producer, and then I'll look at what they're planning, and I'm like, you're planning 10 minutes for 10 people, and you've got 3 questions. Can we talk about that? I'm like, can we, so I think what you get with professionals, also people who are going to offer you some strategy, and the way I've trained my folks, that's what they're going to be able to offer you. So I think for speakers, it's knowing how to do a lot of it themselves, or at least understanding it, and then knowing when do you need to hire someone, because it is a lot to manage for my weekly event, when I don't have a guest speaker, students from my program come and apprentice as a Zoom producer because they get a chance to actually be in that role with 50 or 60 people. And yet it's not a dangerous moment because, you know, if there's a mistake, it's a learning space. We talk about it. I break the fourth wall and just explain what just happened, and we all kind of move on. But it's you don't want to practice in front of your clients. So my best advice actually for everyone listening is to find a reason to practice. Just find, it could be a few friends you want to host something for. It could be people from your grad school, colleagues, former colleagues, whatever, people in your industry. Just make a regular schedule on it. But the 5% Advantage program is the 5% advantage.com, and you can read about it, shoot me an email. Right now we're building a waiting list. It runs when there's a minimum of 6 people and a maximum of 12. And so rather than scheduling dates now, I'm scheduling dates around people's availability, because I have a few people who are interested, but their dates and times didn't line up yet. So we're all just kind of getting a better wait list. And it's super exciting to see what they're doing with it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for telling us what's next for Robbie Samuels. So how can people get in touch with you? You did give out a couple of websites, but if there's anything else that you'd like to share.
Well, everything I do, my book, my podcast, this program, the weekly virtual happy hour, is all available at robbiesamuels.com. And if you want to get started improving your Zoom, I think the first thing you can do is get your settings correctly. So I have a free resource. There's not even an email opt-in for this. It's at robbiesamuels.com/Zoom settings. And if you do sign up for nomoorebadzoom.com, you will receive, in addition to access to the weekly event, you'll also receive my 9 ways to network in a pandemic, because I think it's still highly relevant 6 months later, unfortunately. But you can find all of that at robbiesamuels.com.
Before you go, leave us with some type of inspiration, your favorite quote or something that you can share with our speakers, our entrepreneurs, and our leaders.
Well, my favorite quote is by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I have one correction on that, as I wish that she had said just not citizens, but residents or people, because I don't think you have to be a citizen to make a difference in this country or in this world. And I think that's the part I'm hopeful for as we're heading into an election season. And we just need ways to reach across aisles and connect around community and belongingness. And I think everybody wants to feel like they belong and that they're seen for who they are. And so that quote's always had such meaning for me. And I really, this is again where I'm imploring everyone listening and watching to think about how they could be hosts, how they can convene people. It's so powerful, and it's easier than it's ever been. It used to be you had to know something about booking spaces. And I mean, back in the day, you had to actually send things in the mail. None of that now. It's very easy to just pull people together. It doesn't have to be more than a handful, but people are craving opportunities for connection. And if you're the one who pulls it together for them, you're going to get so many kudos, and it's going to benefit you in ways you can't even imagine. I couldn't have, and now look at this business that I have.
And one more time, what's the website for that free weekly virtual happy hour?
Sure thing. It's nomoorebadzoom.com, because that's the campaign, and I hope you'll join me.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And that's all the time we have on this edition of Rise and Shine with Dr. Sunny. Again, thank you to my guest, Robbie Samuels, for sharing how to make sure you have no more bad Zoom. If you're a shy speaker, would you like to make sure you can be a better Zoom presenter, gain confidence in your speaking? I invite you to join my free monthly Speak and Shine workshop. It's held the last Friday of each month. I'll help you unleash your inner speaking superpowers, some you didn't know you had. Spots are limited. To sign up, go to my Facebook page at facebook.com/iRiseAndShine. If you're not on social media, you can register at my website, sunnyfridge.com. There you can find links to all my shows and podcasts. Thank you so much for connecting. I'm Dr. Sunny. Remember, even online, it's your time to rise and shine.